Hey guys, I want to welcome you back to our second episode of Guiding Tides. Today, we're going to focus on anxiety disorders. And the reason we want to talk about this topic is that most of our society, on a daily basis, is struggling with one form or another of anxiety disorders. And there are several different forms. The two I want to focus on today are generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorders. So we define anxiety when it's an overwhelming level of fear and worry. We all deal with anxiety on a daily basis. Some of it is positive anxiety. Some of it is motivational. If you're a part of a sports team and you know you guys are trying hard to get to the playoffs and you're drilling, and you know the game is coming up, there is anxiousness on that bus ride to that game, or when you're getting together in the locker room and you're getting ready for that game. There's that tension. But that's healthy. It's motivational, as long as you can handle it. Now, if it's overwhelming and you can't focus on anything else that's going on in your life, you can't focus on the people around you and your normal responsibilities as a teenager or even as an adult. If you can't function as a parent, you can't function to go to work, you're trapped in your room with the suffocating feeling that's affecting your daily functioning. And technically, if this is going on for 6 months or more, you're officially diagnosed with anxiety disorder. Okay? So, like I said, we want to talk about generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder. So generalized anxiety disorder are feeling frequent, extreme anxiety and worry for 6 months or more, like I said. There may be feelings of restlessness, being on the edge, being physically exhausted on a constant basis. You might also experience concentration problems, racing thoughts, and irritability, muscle tension, or sleep issues, sleep patterns. They're huge. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're not going to function the next day. That's on a daily basis anyway. But on top of it, if you're worried about not feeling like you're worth anything, and you're letting people down, and you're over magnifying the problems in your life, and it's suffocating, and you can't function throughout the day, that's anxiety disorder. That's generalized anxiety disorder, where you can't pinpoint, what is it? Is it that I don't have a job right now? You could pinpoint that. Is it that I have a substance abuse issue? Well, you can pinpoint that. Generalized anxiety disorder is anything and everything that's hitting you all at once, and you're spinning around, and you don't know how to slow that down to even get that dizziness out of your head and to ground yourself to start figuring out what is triggering this anxiety. That's generalized anxiety disorder. Panic disorder, we experience frequent and unexpected panic attacks. Now, these attacks are sudden, intense feelings of fear or terror, which there's no immediate danger that's present that we could clearly identify. There's no big barking dog at you and you have a phobia of dogs and like, oh my God, this dog is going to kill me. You could pinpoint that. But it's more like that story you were talking about, Christian, when you walked into, what was it, Lowe's or Home Depot?
Home Depot.
And all of a sudden, you just felt everything crushing upon you.
I talked to you right after. That's
Yeah.
what it was. Yeah, we had a discussion, and that's something that I dealt with a lot, felt a lot of that, and I didn't know what the hell it was. Being a control freak like I am, I want to know what it is, pinpoint it, and eradicate the issue. But yeah, it's exactly that. I think you just nailed that on the head.
How about for most of my adult life, grocery shopping in the supermarket?
I can relate to you for that.
You ever see a carriage completely full, just abandoned in an aisle? That was me if I'm not treating my anxiety. I'll get a panic disorder for no reason, and I got to leave.
You and I can never go shopping at the same time. It would cost them a lot of money because I have the same goddamn thing. It's funny. Yeah, it's like it's a feeling that it's, for me, like with shopping, I don't know if you guys get this, but out of nowhere, I think I'm like, I'm probably about to get a panic attack. I'm like, no way. And I'm like, damn it, here it comes. I feel it. It's starting to take over.
Wow.
It feels like I'm standing on ice. Like that's how I explain it, I guess.
Yeah.
Not stable, shaky, and then like the vision starting to go black. It feels like everything, like you said, is starting to collapse in. And it's I'll run. I'll just run out of the damn store. And I mean, seeing a grown man with tattoos just running out of a store. And I told her one time, I think I called you, or
I think you called me.
yeah, and I was in Target. I was getting something for the house, and I freaked out. And I'm like, okay, but then I thought I was gonna collapse, so I started sprinting for the door, and security, loss prevention, hemmed me up like I was stealing something, and I'm like distraught. But I'm like, I'm gonna end up in an ambulance. They're gonna think I'm crazy.
Crazy,
So
yeah.
I had to rope my shit together real quick, but yeah,
Wow.
that's that generalized anxiety, I guess.
Yeah, they go hand in hand, and the key factors are that we don't know in the moment what we're struggling with. How did this come on? And it just hits you, right? There's a wave that just knocks you off your balance. Like you're a kid in the ocean, when you first started going in the ocean and you like play with the waves, right? I could take this wave on. And all of a sudden you're flat on your butt,
How many times has that happened to me when my daughter gets sick? My anxiety and my fear and my worry kick in so bad. So bad. I feel like I go right off the deep end with worrying about what could go wrong.
Do you start thinking about it in a catastrophic kind of way?
Oh, 100%. Yep.
What are some of those thoughts that like enter your head?
Oh, we're going to have to go to the emergency room. She's going to have a fever. She's going to have a seizure. Anything and everything. You name it, I go down that path.
Wow. And in that path, do you come across the feeling of, I'm not going to be able to handle what's coming my way,
100%.
right?
Yep. I feel like I'm not equipped or built to handle what's going to happen.
You can't control it. It's
No.
out of your control.
Yeah. So I just try to like tell myself that the ruminating thoughts aren't real and to kind of like get out of my head. And sometimes that helps, or I journal.
Gotcha. Let me come back to that with like the coping strategies that you're using to deal with it. But I just want to identify the commonality of the fact that when we feel these panic attacks, when we feel that wave coming on us, and it's like, oh, here it comes, right? At some point, I think that we all feel that we can't handle it. I'm not equipped to deal with it. Therefore, I will run. I got to get out of the situation.
I can't seem to develop a good self-awareness to it. I'm already 2-3 stages into it, 2-3 reactions into it by the time I realize it's happening, and that my behaviors, my reactions, my actions are coming from this place of anxiety. Yeah, I've even done a lot of, pointed intentional work to try and gain that. And it's just something that eludes me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that when we're in that spiral, it's hard to navigate where north is,
Yep.
right? Because we're not grounded and we're just spinning in it,
A spiral is real.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to identify is that the commonalities that different people feel, like we all have different triggers that cause this anxiety that we can analyze, and we could look at, when we're calmer and when we're in a better state of mind. But when we're in it, the commonality that I've seen from the clients I work with is this sense of complete loss, magnified with the feeling of, even if I knew what the issue was, I'm not equipped to deal with it. Right? So there's that, where's my strategy? What's my go-to? In the moment, I don't know. And I think that's a very real thing
It is.
that we all struggle with.
I mean, for me, when it's spiral time, that's what I call it, because I'm like, great, I'm spiraling, everything's out of control, is the fear of me losing control.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing for me, because when I lose control, who's going to take care of everything?
How is everything going to be okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yep. Same. It's tough to broach the subject without talking about ADHD and having a lifelong diagnosis. And what it looks like for me, my generalized anxiety, I mentioned on the last episode, I've received a diagnosis fairly recently in the last few years. Being somebody with a unrelenting, rapid thinking mind to begin with my ADHD, I have a built-in neurological trigger there,
Yeah.
never mind environmental, the environment could be completely fine, like you alluded to earlier, and every situation, everything, every incoming text message or notification, it feels like it's coming to kill me, you know, but it's not. And like you touched on earlier, Jess, my emotions, my feelings aren't real. They're just jolts of electricity in my brain. And if I could ever achieve self-awareness around my anxiety, look out, I'm going to be unstoppable at that point, you know, bulletproof.
What's funny that you were just saying that, about situations or, environment. I don't know that any one of you three would know that I'm in the middle of a red 10 fucking panic attack right now. It's weird. Inside right now, like this is real, this is raw, this is right now in front of all of you. I'm sitting here and I know everything's good, but I keep getting these feelings in my chest. Feel like my heart's starting to race. I so badly want to triage myself, make sure my fucking O2 is good, my heart rate's all right. And I keep trying to, cycle through, and I'm like, what's going on with me right now? What's causing it? And I can't seem to figure it out.
Do you think it's because we're actually talking about it?
I don't know. And see, but that's the point of generalized anxiety disorder. You can't pinpoint it. This quite literally, 10 out of 10 could be what's triggering me. But I have no fucking idea. It's a wild concept. I'm okay with the fact that I know I'm safe. Nothing bad's going to happen from a panic attack. The worst thing I can think of really isn't even that bad. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So just to bring that to the table, because you're talking about environments and where it can and can't happen. And this is probably, next to being with Julia and the girls, the safest place I could be.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So I figured I'd drop that in there for you.
But I think it's awesome that you're identifying in the middle of experiencing this attack. You have the fortitude to identify that you're in a safe place. It's not going to be the worst case scenario. You're not going to be dragged out of here in an ambulance. If you are, well, we'll cross that bridge.
Yeah, right.
But in the moment, you're telling yourself, right? There's this other voice in you that's
You're acknowledging it.
acknowledging it, right? And then you're trying to turn the volume down on the anxiety by telling yourself, I'm with safe people. I'm in a safe environment. I'm okay. So that's a coping strategy that we have to learn how to do. And that takes practice. And we practice that when we don't have our anxiety disorders. So routines are really important in coping strategies.
Yeah, it strengthens them for sure. Especially when you go back on and you say, okay, hey, I had this really bad attack this time. If you can identify how you felt in that moment, body starting to feel like you're going to lose control, head's kind of spinning, dizziness, eyes feel like there's tension, like those are my physical symptoms.
Right.
But if I can identify a time where I felt that and nothing bad did happen, I did feel relief, it helps me get there quicker to relief,
Right.
That's what works for me. I was just saying to Jess, I've been getting a lot of panic and anxiety lately, and I just fucking bulldoze through it.
That's sometimes the best way to be.
Sometimes it's punitive, and I mean, yes, all this stuff that we're doing is beautiful, it's great, but when you got two sick kids and you and your partner are fucking butting heads because it's just been a long week, sometimes you need to just be like, all right, stop being a pussy and just do it, get through it, deal with it later. That's just how I get through it. But
it's a catch.
I circle back to that. And I'm like, all right, earlier I was feeling this. What triggered it? How did I get through it? How could I have done it differently?
I don't know if we differ here, but sometimes talking about like becoming self-aware of it and talking about trying to talk about it and fix it and walk things back or, just kind of get the train back on the tracks. Like I oftentimes make things worse, and then realize even that might be a vehicle of my anxiety. Like I'm anxiously trying to grab at and fix things once I become self-aware of the fact that, I'm having an attack.
Can you give me an example of that? Of like how you try to put things back on track and how it didn't work?
Yeah. A real easy go-to, and you alluded in your personal life, is just button heads with the wife and for no real good reason. And then I start anxiously, rapidly thinking about the fact that we're button heads and where is this going to lead to? And if we can't get along, how are we going to buy a house and stay married and, you know, get married and stay married and raise our children to be healthy adults and just like,
Those
you know,
ruminating thoughts just get you.
yeah, it sounds like you and I have a lot in common on just how ridiculous it can get in
Yep.
our heads, but it's so real in the moment.
It is.
It's very vivid and very real. And the thing that makes it worse is when you have like a gut intuition that backs you up and a lot of these things you worry about that the three people sitting next to you would tell you you're nuts for worrying about that, they manifest, they come real. And your ability to see it before it happened thwarts disaster even. I don't know if you relate to that.
I do
but-
relate to that tremendously. I definitely do.
And then it doubles down your,
And then
you
it's
know,
even harder to like
break the
silence.
cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
You co-sign it after that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I
love
gave an
that.
example during that time, but
No, you didn't, but that's okay. But you did hit a couple key points that when you're spiraling and then you have this new issue come in, like if you're arguing with your wife and you're already dealing with the spiral. I'll make up an example. Let's say you're going over your monthly budget and you're like, oh, we spent way too much on that vacation. I don't have enough put aside for my truck or the phone. I don't know, whatever.
Whatever it might be. Yeah.
Kids karate class, whatever, you know, and it's like, all right, well, if I move money from here, I can go over here, but no, wait, that's a mutual fund. I can't take it out. And you know, that causes me anxiety, right? Like I hate doing that stuff. That's why my wife does it. Otherwise I'd be in jail. I know the IRS would like hunt me down, you know, and thank God my wife handles all of that stuff. I just hand my paycheck over.
Yep.
I got like $20 a week. That's about it. You know, I've been living like that for the last 15 years. And
that's all you
fine.
need.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how I address my anxiety. Laura, please, thank you. I
Yep.
love you. You know, and there it is. But when we're in the throes of an anxiety attack, and you got this new thing coming in, your boss comes in through the door. Hey, I need this by Friday. Thank you. And you're already having a problem breathing and focusing.
It
right?
makes it even that 10,000 pound weight on your chest is even heavier.
You know, right. And last minute you're told, hey, we got staff meeting today. I got to meet with this, you know, with this parent about their kid. Can you take over? Here you go. I'm like, what? Huh? All right. I guess so. But I'm already dealing with, I don't know, other issues that are making me spiral out of control. And I'm compounding it, right? It's crazy because then we go into that mode of,
Scrambling.
we're scrambling, but everything is a catastrophe. Our head goes to that catastrophe level. That's what I was asking you about. You know, what are you thinking is the worst case scenario? And, you know, is that where you're going, you know, when your daughter's sick?
Yep.
Right? So when we go to the point where we're making a catastrophe out of a situation, thinking worst case scenario, that ties into that feeling of, I'm not equipped to handle this situation. I'm not ready. What do? I don't know what to do. Then we start self-defeating.
What else that poetically ties into is our first episode, Fight, Flight, Fawn, Freeze. That's a reaction to that. As you were explaining that, I've thought back to times in my life that I've witnessed and I've actually done myself where I've been anxious and I either can't identify that I'm anxious or, I couldn't identify that I was anxious, and I would just lash out. Then I kind of started to sit with that more and more, and I wouldn't tell anybody. You know, I would lash out at, let's say Julia said something to me about bills and I'm already in an anxious state. I can't possibly think of that.
That happens to me as well.
I can compartmentalize, but I can't get into that. So I'll give a snappy response. And when I give the snappy response, then it turns into a whole thing. And all I want to do inside is say, hey, I'm sorry I had this going on, but I couldn't identify it. Then my ego would get in the way. And I'm like, I don't want every time I snap to be like, hey, I'm just having a panic attack. You know what I mean?
Slam dunk. That's it, right? And we try to preserve ourselves to the best of our ability, and that's where our ego ties in.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're in the throes of an anxiety attack and someone else is coming in and asking, well, what's for dinner? I don't know. Maybe it's takeout. Did I really have to say it like that? No. Did I really want to say, I'm having a really hard time right now. Can you give me a minute? I got to get my head together. You know, and hopefully the conversation goes to, well, Mahesh, what's bothering you? And I could talk about it. That would be ideal, right?
Of course.
But that is a coping strategy that you have to practice when you're not having the anxiety disorder.
Now, not to take us too far off the beat, but I'm curious your take, because personally, at this phase of my life, I only value conversation with people who can hold a deep conversation. So like that. Let's say, Jeff, I'll pick on you two. Say you weren't the type of person that I'd be like, hey, I'm having a panic attack. You know, if we're out, something happens, we have an interaction, and I just snap at you. You're going to snap back. It's going to turn into an issue. Whereas, say I'm talking to you, I'm like, you know what? I'm sorry. I was being an asshole. I'm having a panic attack. You know how to walk me through that.
Yep.
What would you say to deal with the different types of people? Because not everyone walking around is emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Or people actually don't really understand anxiety.
Right.
Some
No.
people think it's fake.
An embarrassing realization I'm having is the degree in which I've expected, my fiance to tolerate my snappiness, and even to add on to it, well, you should know I'm probably anxious when I do that.
Because
And
we think that everybody knows how we're feeling, but in reality, they have no clue.
they're just getting snapped at.
Yep.
Wow.
It's the processing afterwards in an environment where you feel safe, when you're not feeling that pressure, when you're not in that spiral, to reassess and to really have the guts to go to people that you love and trust to bounce this off of. Like you were saying, if you guys are out and, you're snapping at Jess, having that moment, hey, I apologize for the way I was acting, but I'm struggling right now, and it's got nothing to do with us in the moment, but, I didn't mean what I said. However you want to fix that, create that bridge, and hopefully that person is going to respond with, what are you struggling with? How can I support you? And no, not everybody can do that. Not everybody acknowledges that,
And that's tough.
Yeah, especially when we don't want to see that person ever in that role.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you have a sibling that was snapping at you and they go, I'm just having a really hard time. Yeah, whatever. I don't care. Mom and dad are coming over and they expect the house to be clean. So I'm doing my part, do your part, and moving away. That's not really helpful,
No,
But
because it gets brushed off.
even going back to that person later on, to have that ability to say, listen, I got to talk to you about this because I've been struggling with this on a regular basis. So if this happens in the future, bro, I need your support. Can that happen? Can it not happen? It depends on who
Who
that
you're
person
talking
is,
to.
right? So going back to what do I do? So in the moment when you're not feeling anxious, thinking about in the future when it's going to happen again, you texted me when you were having a panic attack and I walked you through it, right? So you trusted me to reach out to me. So knowing that, having that in your back pocket, okay, next time I go through this, Mahesh doesn't mind if he gets a quick text from me. He's one person. Who's another person? Or what can I do if I don't have anybody? If I'm in the parking lot, what do I do? And there is that tie between mind and body. And this is legit. So many times I'll watch different reels or movies where people will try to talk about yoga or mindfulness meditation, and it comes off so fruity. I'm like, oh. And I don't mean
Sometimes that
in a
doesn't
sexual
work.
connotation way, fruity. So please don't yell at me and send me hate emails.
He's a big mango guy.
I love mangoes.
Oh yeah.
But it's around. It's just presented in this hokey way of they're trying to sell something or a product. I'm like, stop that. Meditation, mindfulness has been around for thousands of years.
Without Instagram.
Yeah, and without a trademark on it, yoga pants, really, $100? Are you serious? You know how long yoga's been around? They didn't have yoga pants back in the day. So when we're in the throes of an anxiety attack, that's not the time to process. We got to let it ride. If you can mentally, think of yourself as a surfer. You want to ride that wave. You don't want that wave to crush you. Just stop fighting it. Okay? Just go with it until it subsides. After you go through whatever process you're going through, hopefully you're not in a detrimental situation. But if you go through the anxiety attack, you start feeling yourself coming back to normal. Sometime during that day, journaling is huge.
Yeah, journaling has helped me a lot.
Because we start seeing trends and we start identifying, okay, every time I go to this Target, at this time, I feel triggered because there's always some guy in front of me. You know, I'm always being cut off. You know, I've got a issue with being around in crowds. I don't like crowds. So instead of going at 5 o'clock in the evening, back when people used to go to the mall, you know, I'm going to go on a Sunday morning when there's no one in the mall and get my shopping done, you know, to avoid that. So that's a strategy you could use, and it might be a Band-Aid on a gash, but it's a Band-Aid. It's a start.
I
It's
think
a start at looking at and analyzing what those triggers are.
Yeah. I think back when I was younger, like I used to be able to party with like thugs. And now I can't even go to the grocery store without having an anxiety attack. Like it's mind boggling to me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that
Like
one.
I had no care in the world for so many years. And then all of a sudden, boom, anxiety. Like where did that come from? Like, does it just happen? I know, well, I mean, of course it just happens. But like when I went to go see a neuropsychologist, I was diagnosed with ADHD, PTSD, generalized anxiety disorder, and major depressive disorder in the severe form. So when I got diagnosed with all those things, so many things made sense, but the anxiety, because it's like, why does my brain do this to myself? I don't get it.
Like literally just yesterday was wrestling with a similar thought of like, why can't I just like figure this out and think past it and, you know, overcome it or override it? But talking about like coping mechanisms, right? There's the event that you just talked about. You know, that event comes with heightened symptoms of, you know, our disorders. It comes with heightened symptoms leading up to it. Then the event happens. Then there's this period afterwards where, you know, treatment takes place and we learn the coping mechanisms, we learn how to live with this, and we enter into this new part of our life where we learn how to live with this. We learn how to function. We learn how to just exist, you know, and it doesn't mean we now can just stop ourselves from having, you know, this stuff.
Wish.
You know, it comes with a lot of daily labor. So when you start getting into like the comorbidities or the co-occurring stuff, ADHD and anxiety real quickly will lead to a depressive state. You know, when I'm, you know, feeling misunderstood and alienated, and, you know, if these efforts I made were just understood better, it would have fixed everything and everything would have worked out okay. And it's not going to now.
It's the fixation on
depressed.
everything.
You know, I want to isolate and hide
Yep.
and pull the covers over my head. And I'm not a depressed person. Like when I'm struggling with depression, it's very, very masked. People, it's really hard to pick up on it.
You're not a depressed person until you become a depressed person. That's all I heard there.
Well, you just don't see me anymore. You know, I'm just
Right.
gone. I isolate real fast.
You don't present yourself as a depressed person.
Right. So I didn't have the luxury a couple of years ago to journal, to stop and meditate. You know, I was running a sophisticated healthcare company with barely any qualifications to be doing so. And it was going wonderfully. It was thriving. I had just received news from my fiance that we were going to be having a child, you know, and that was very exciting, but sudden news, you know, if you're picking up what I'm putting down. And so many things in my life were great. And if I had to pull the e-brake to go into an outpatient program or go into inpatient, and things were starting to get bad enough to where I thought about those things. You know, there were some mornings I couldn't get out of bed to go do my job, to take care of my family, to take care of myself.
I can relate to all of that as well.
But the depression, like I've been depressed too, where that went on for weeks or months, you know, like ugly. This I had to mask. I had to, at some point rather quickly, or everything was, you know, the sum of all fears was going to come true. I had to put on my big boy pants and go back out there and present okay and get shit done.
So you had to preserve how other people viewed you.
Sure.
And you had to fulfill that role. right?
And I also experienced this sensation or reality that I often see people on the other side of the table that are talking to me as clients, considering getting help themselves with similar issues, of being in a position where I believe taking the time away, stepping away from my family, stepping away from my career, stepping away to slow down and analyze and figure these things out and learn these coping mechanisms, it would just create too much consequence and disaster, negative, not just to my perception, but, bills and things that just need to, the wheels need to keep turning. So what I'm getting at is, I opted to see a prescriber and allow for pharmaceutical intervention. And being a person in recovery, specifically around alcohol, I had to be very careful because the common go-tos for that is benzodiazepine, which has a very similar neurological effect as alcohol, and I jokingly call it booze in pill form. So that that go-to's off the table. The temptation to not even, I don't want to I hate putting labels on people, let alone myself. That moment of hesitation where I'm seeing the provider and I'm like, do I tell him about my background? And of course I did. It's just something, if you're in recovery, you understand what I'm talking about. The thought's there, the devil on your shoulder. And what I ended up being prescribed was called Buspar, buspirone. It is a very mild, I got to refresh myself on the type of medication it is, but very minimal effects. And if anything, I probably experienced like a placebo effect, that it helps my, my panic and constant rumination. It helped quite a bit. And once that slowed me down a few weeks into treatment and therapy, I was talking to somebody new virtually that I'd never connected with for therapy. Then I was able to apply, have some time to sit down and journal, have some time to incorporate daily meditation. It's like in the event and in the crisis, there's so many different directions you can go in. And for me, I was able to, thank God, steer things from, derailing through that experience with the way I went.
Well, let me dial this back a little bit, because you were saying earlier you put on a mask when you're depressed. Most people can't identify your depression. You could be right there in front of us, just going through the motions, because you have to fulfill that role, whatever role you're in at that moment, right? And I think we all fall prey to that. And Christian mentioned earlier how his ego was confronted. When you're feeling that anxiety attack and you don't know what to do, not knowing what to do is a hit on your ego. We feel weak, we feel helpless, we feel vulnerable, and we're at the mercy of this panic attack or that anxiety that we're feeling of the world crushing in on us. And that ability for us to reach out to someone close to us, or in that example you mentioned, if you and Jess were out and you snapped at her, that ability for you to be honest and explain where you were confronts your ego.
There's something to be said about that, because I've done that. I did that twice this past week. So Reader's Digest version of it, and a little bit of a trigger warning. I went to work, I pulled up, and I was just there for a routine procedure. And I seen a ton of ambulances, EMTs, fire trucks. Immediately triggered me back to the scene that I walked onto with my sister-in-law. So I'm like, oh shit. But I had it pinpointed. I knew what was going on, but I still couldn't control it. So I go into the building. Where I work, it's kind of a rough neighborhood, so I'm not shocked to see all that. But it felt different. So I go up in the elevator, and long story short, somebody had passed away. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. I'm like, this is making me feel some type of way. Not to make the situation about me, but I'm like, it's triggering me. And the other people that I was working with, one of a higher importance, I said, hey guys, look, I'm just going to level with you real quick. I said, this situation is setting me off. I said, it's reminded me of my sister-in-law who committed suicide. I said, there's no correlation here other than what I see outside for, emergency personnel. Just identifying it, I literally took that weight and I said, hey guys, you want to hold this with me? And if they chose not to hold it, well, fuck it, I'm going to drop it if no one wants to carry it because I can't do it today. That's the approach I had.
Yeah.
However, in a maladaptive sense, so not good way to deal with sense, I was driving, and for some reason, I think a lot of it might be positional. I got a bad back and two blown shoulders. We were driving, and I started to get that feeling. Everything was closing in, and I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, this on Harrison Ave, we can't do this right now. So
no.
then I kind of started twitching around and stuff. Again, half positional, half mental. And the person that I was with, again, an important gentleman, I could see him looking at me, but he didn't want to question it. And I was like, hey, yeah, I got a bad back. Sometimes it locks up. So I bullshitted him, but I still took a portion of the weight. I said, here, let's do something else with this.
You should be proud of yourself for doing that.
It felt good. And the next time, I'm almost excited for the next one to come up because I get to be like, bang,
But how different is this compared to how you did handle it before?
Jesus Christ. I mean, my wife could probably vote on that, but 10 times better. It's more productive. I get to the end result quicker. There's humility in saying, hey, I'm not all right now. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm not saying, I'm scared that this is going to happen. I'm not running through that. I'm just saying, hey, like it's a normal human emotion.
Yeah.
Here's what's going on. You don't have to do anything, but I'm just putting it out there. And if somebody ever asks me, why are you telling me that? Well, because I need to tell you because I feel as though you're going to judge me. He might think I'm fucking nuts by the time I get to the end of my explanation.
Whatever.
But just admitting it feels so much better.
Saying it out loud matters.
It does. I had a
Say
guy
problem talked about as a problem cut in half or something.
Correct.
Like that.
There was a gentleman I had a conversation with, really changed the trajectory of my thought process. And that's honestly what led me to getting into a more spiritual version of myself and picking up that book. He was explaining to me, he's like, we have, I think it was 50,000 thoughts a day. He said, you can't control your thoughts. Excuse me. You can control your thoughts. Don't let your thoughts control you. Out of 50,000 thoughts, there's a good chance at least a few of them are going to fuck you up.
Yes.
Out of 50,000 thoughts, 48,999 of them are anxious thoughts.
Yeah.
For me. And
Sitting
here listening to all this, it's like the word thief keeps coming to my mind. Like it's a thief. It steals from my moments in front of my children when in the back of my mind, I'm thinking I'm cycling through all these dangers and fears and, at work.
That's awesome.
It steals from me on the job. It steals from me in my relationship with my fiance. It's a thief.
It is a thief. And I can relate to that tremendously as well, because I feel like whenever I go on vacation, I can't fully enjoy my vacation because I'm so worried about how are we going to get there? Is everything going to be okay? Is anything bad going to happen while we're away? Especially if I'm away from my daughter, I think about the worst case scenario. If she gets sick, who's going to take care of her? I know my mom can handle it, but I should be there. And then I get through my vacation and it's over and I'm like, I just spent my whole time worrying about the whole entire trip.
Checking in back home the whole time.
Yeah, and it's you should be able to let go and relax and not to worry so much, because you planned for this, you took your time and you got everything situated and all that. But
you
then
deserve this vacation.
Exactly, but I still feel that immense guilt of I shouldn't be away from my home, my family, blah 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 blah, whatever it might be. But
guilt, that's interesting. I'm gonna take that home with me and examine my own stuff and wonder if it's coming from a place of guilt.
Sometimes it can be, for sure.
I mean, I can certainly relate with phantom thoughts of I don't deserve this life, I don't deserve a family. I don't deserve tranquil waters, because of something I said or did 18 years ago,
But I think that's when it comes back to having faith in something. It doesn't have to be, religiously, but faith in something to be able to pull you out of whatever you're in at that moment. You know, for me, I have to believe that there's a higher power of some sort to get me out of my spiral or out of my complete ruminating thought period.
I just read something yesterday, and I stopped reading because my wife and I got really good news about our daughter getting into a school.
Congrats.
That's
Thank you.
amazing.
Super excited. She's gonna take over the world. But so what I was reading was, imagine, and I think you could all do this. You could all, and you don't have to, close your eyes and imagine you're holding a tennis ball. You can probably make that seem very tangible in your hand. You know the way it feels with the fuzzies. You know the indents where the lines are going. You know that new tennis ball smell. It's in Jeff's hand right now. No problem. But why can't we do that for feeling good, for success? You can. It's a shift in mind. That's having faith.
Yep.
I read that. I can't wait to get back into that. That was huge. Now I'm curious to see in the comment section how you guys deal with that.
Yeah.
Everything that we're talking about thus far. So tap in with that, and let's get some conversations flowing, because we're not the only people who have dealt with this. That's for sure.
That's for damn sure.
I want to just bring this back to when you started talking about the thief, and I responded, "That's awesome." I want to clarify. "Oh, it's often you suck. Your life sucks." It's awesome that you're able to identify that you're angry, perturbed, bothered by this concept of the thief. And,
Just not in the moment.
right, yeah,
when
no,
it counts.
Thank God it's not in the moment, because yeah, if you had anxiety disorder throughout the day, we got issues here, you know. And I charge by the hour. So, but if we're able to identify that we're angry at this thing happening to us, I use it in my life as a motivator. I don't want this happening again, you know, and I want to see that be contagious to the viewers of, you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. That should be that spark, that factor that goes back into fear or flight of, I'm going to fight, and I got to start looking at what's causing this and how we're going to move forward. When we look at applying coping strategies, when we look at what do we do to address our anxiety, when we look at that we're at a point where we have to do something, our greatest barrier, the commonality, is our ego. When Jeff was talking about having that mask and hiding that depression, you know, when Chris is talking about, you know, being in the moment where he's interacting with his family, and I'm in dad role, I'm in husband role, I have to fulfill my obligations and my duties. Yes, that's great to have, you know, in our forefront. And yes, we're at work right now. We got to keep ourselves together, and we push ourselves to function. But sometimes we push ourselves to function and we dismiss the issues causing that anxiety. We tuck it away, and then it compounds over time.
That's what happened to me.
Right? So it's like a bacteria. You leave it in the dark long enough, it's just going to grow. Right? And we ignore it. And I think the commonality that we all deal with, when we ignore those issues, we set it aside because, I have all these other obligations I have to fulfill. I have too much on my plate to deal with this stuff right now. That's avoidance.
It's hard though when the obligation is yourself, you know, and you live in this like state of self-loathing or just a constant undertone of like, you know, why would I make time for me? You know, like my family's more important, my career's more important, my company's more important, my client's more important. And just listening to you just now, I thought back to what I said earlier, like almost making an excuse for myself, right? That I didn't take action for as long as I did, or for taking the type of action I took. It's like, yeah, maybe in that ramping up period where the symptoms, you know, things are getting out of control before the event where I realize and learn or become diagnosed or you know, finally find the fuck out. That ramp up time is a great opportunity to start to, you know, try to apply journaling, try to apply meditation, try to apply individual therapy. And maybe those will be brakes, you know, tapping the brakes on a train that's just completely runaway, you know, maybe they'll just blow right off. But at least I would have gotten to the event quicker. Yeah, you know, if I just maybe if I had a point of accountability person, and I can't say those words without thinking of a former colleague and just amazingly talented clinical professional, Joe Papa. What's up, Joe? Having point of accountability people, you know, and when he taught me about this, it was in a professional sense and you know, the business that we worked in together. But in my personal life, Jesus, if I assigned somebody, if I allowed somebody to play that role in my life, talk about ego, I could have dealt with this problem a decade ago, years ago, you know, because it's always been there. The ADHD has been there since childhood, which means the anxiety has been there. And resonating earlier with something you said earlier, Mahesh, sometimes my anxiety can be like a superpower. Sometimes my ADHD can be a superpower when these things, you know, apply to sports. Like, I've never played on a championship team, so that was, you know, I didn't relate. But
Right.
chess, staying 3 steps ahead of your opponent. Your opponent is yourself. If you know what your shortfalls are and your shortcomings are, and maybe you don't, to be fair, but I can literally stay a few steps ahead of myself now and not get to a point where things are
Unbearable.
just pouring out of me.
Yeah.
Unbearable.
That brings me to an interesting thought, you just explaining all that. You strike me as the type of person, maybe kid, teenager, or current, you get your hands on something and you learn everything about it. You might go through the manual a couple times, and even in the languages you don't know.
Obsessed.
Obsessed, right? You become obsessed and you become really good at whatever you were doing, a video game or electronic or something. You become obsessed and you get great joy from it. Let me challenge you real quick. Why don't you do that with your, I don't want to say disabilities, but your disadvantages with these mental health issues? Why don't you tap into saying, I have anxiety, but I'm going to make that into a fucking weapon?
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever really intentionally launched an effort to do that. You know, in hindsight, I can see times where by chance or by luck, I was able to harness it. But yeah, that's an interesting challenge.
You would, and I don't know how to construct that. I think I'm going to
We
challenge
got
myself.
we got Mahesh for that.
But right, so like to be able, and that's something we can all, as well as viewers, kind of work towards, is saying, all right, I have this, and this. I'm going to make that into something that is beneficial to me and the people around me. Become interested in your mental health.
So to summarize that, even to boil that even down further, goals.
Yep.
Developing goals absolutely helps my anxiety, and then working towards my goals. And that, you know, that ties into too what I talked about with the integration therapy in the last episode, integrating journaling in. Nobody came for me, but I went and did a little bit more research myself after our session. And, you know, it would be like directly bringing CBT into individual therapy, combining 2 forms of something. So I was on the nose with journaling.
For those of you who don't know what CBT is, it's cognitive behavior therapy.
Thank you.
It's challenging those catastrophic thoughts of the client in front of you of, I'm a useless mother, I'm a useless parent, I'm a horrible spouse, I'm going to lose my house, they're going to fire me from my job, they're going to see me as the scam artist that I am. And it's challenging those thoughts and taking it down a couple of notches to, it's not as bad as you think, because you're still here functioning. And to your point, Christian, when Jeff was talking about, I'm going to push these issues aside because I have these other roles to fulfill. If you switch the mindset to, I'm going to address these issues because I have these roles to fulfill, and I don't want these things in my way while I'm trying to fulfill the role of parent, you know, coworker, whatever role you see yourself in. And yeah, making it that fuel, making it that weapon. And how do we switch that? We continue to reach out for support. It's not easy. And obviously it's not easy because you guys wouldn't be tapping in to watch the show if it was easy and you're looking to see what other people are doing, which is the whole mission statement of why we're here. Is to point out that we're all struggling with it and that it's not your little secret that you're letting your ego overrun your life. and you don't want to be seen as someone who's struggling. We're all struggling, and we have to address it. And what is it? What is the it when we start looking at defining the goals? We all hit rock bottom at different stages of our lives. And due to our own individuality, those rock bottoms look different. You know, it might be getting arrested. It might be behind on your bills. It might be you looking at your kids and noticing they're constantly avoiding me. You know, that's a reality that I think a lot of us face.
Wish I had that problem.
My kids only avoid me when they color on walls or stupid shit like that. Not there yet.
There are people that walk into their homes and they go through the motions and they dread the conversation with other people in their homes. There's so many teenagers I work with that just want to walk into that house, avoid contact, go to their room, shut their door, eat in their room, not come out until the next day, and they go to school.
I feel like everybody feels that though at some point.
At some point in their
Absolutely.
life. Yeah.
That's hitting me as a parent right now. Like,
Oh,
God,
yeah.
I would feel like I failed as a parent. To
How many
create
parents?
that reality.
This is a reality, and I talk to parents about this every day. And when I say every day, I mean every day, through emails or on the phone, where they are afraid of their kids, or they're afraid of interacting with their kids. They're afraid of making things worse with their kids. And everyone in that household is ignoring that elephant in the room, that no one is communicating. I asked a kid once, hey, when was the last time you hugged your mom? Right? Kid just breaks down, as has often happened when I've asked that question to a lot of people. When was the last time you said, I love you? When was the last time I heard, I love you? Just out of nowhere. Go to the grocery store, love you. Just simple. And if you have to pause to answer that question,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's an issue there.
The amount of clients I've pissed off just telling them just off the cuff, like, and call your mother and tell her you love her today. All right. Give her a call. Yeah.
I say that all the time.
Should.
You should say I love you with intent. If a root issue is that you don't feel validated, flip it. Validate somebody else. If you feel the world is cruel, flip it. Be kind. That power that you have in affecting somebody else's life that you're not seeing in yours, be that person to somebody else.
Be the energy in the room. That's something that I've been hammering on.
Yeah.
When I first learned about that, I learned about it just by chance. I think I called you, Jeff, right afterwards, and I know I texted you because I was in a Dunkin' Donuts, and the woman sucked, absolutely sucked. And I'm 3 people behind, and I know we talked about this a little bit in that very first time we were filming, but so she's like going off at this person. The next guy, he's ready for war, so he's firing at her, and it's just getting ugly. And I'm like, I just want to get my coffee, my wife's coffee, my kids fucking munchkins, like none of this. But then they're going, and like I had this ego thing of like, I'm gonna be a bigger dickhead than him. Like, wait till she gets to me. She's gonna regret her fucking day.
Yeah.
But then as I'm stepping up, something just came over me. It wasn't even a change of thought. It was like a shift in energy. And I was like, how are you, ma'am? I gave her a big smile. I'm not a big fucking smiler, if you know me well enough. But I cranked one out. And she kind of, I seen like the tension drop a little bit. And we started talking, and you just seen the shift in her.
That matters.
It does. It absolutely does.
When someone's screaming and you lower your voice, that's control.
It is.
That's what I do when my daughter's having a tantrum. I just get really quiet.
I don't know if somebody told me this or if I just developed this on my own, but I like to think that there's like a karmic balance too. And when I'm doing the positive thing, when I'm turning the tables in a positive manner, like that there's a karmic deposit. I'm making a deposit, and that's going to come back to me in some situation where I'm getting frustrated. Like somebody's going to step to me, and they're going to be the energy, and they're going to change the tone, and they're going to bring things down, and I'm going to be like, wow, okay.
This doesn't tie into the episode, but like I said, we're not going to sit here and just be robots. We're real people. We're going to have a real conversation. I was thinking when I was driving the other day, I used to get into road rages all the goddamn time. It was every day. I mean,
That was a coping mechanism for you.
everybody, I almost enjoyed it though. It was a rush for me, you know? And everybody knew, like everybody had been involved in at least one of my road rages, and it was just ugly. I'd follow people to their house, like unless there were kids in the car or something, like it got ugly. Anyways, I'm driving and excuse me, somebody had cut me off, and I'm like, whatever. Again, I work in a tough neighborhood, so it's a lot of bullshit all day. I went to spit out the window, and there was a car coming up. I'm like, I'll wait. And I started thinking, I'm like, an older version of me, I've spit in people's faces in fucking road rages, you know what I mean, just to prove a point. But something, when I shifted the energy, I don't attract that anymore. Karmic deposit, but like you're talking about energy, that's why you.
What are you
piqued my
putting out
interest
there? Yeah, what are you putting out there
so
now?
I don't get into the vehicle and I'm like, somebody cuts me off. It's, here's what I would rehearse what the hell I was gonna say. It made no sense. It's stupid. But none of that happens anymore. It's not a part of my everyday life. That energy shifted. I don't look for that energy. If it comes anywhere near me, I'm like, I don't recognize you anymore. Keep it moving. So karmic deposit, but you are the energy. You receive the energy you put out, for sure, which ties into the karma.
You ever find yourself in a situation where you go to your hangout spot? And I'm old, but I'm not that old. And I remember back in the day hanging out in college.
At the five and dime.
There used to be a string of bars around us. They're called Fathers. They weren't very unique. Fathers 1, Fathers 2. That's the name of the bars. And they were all biker bars, dives. And it was like the best thing to do was people watching. And as regulars, we would watch the usual tough guy come in the room. I'm like, okay, show's on. Because I just couldn't wait to see what this guy was going to do within seconds of walking in, like he rehearsed it, like he's walking into looking for a fight, wanting to engage in a negative activity. And it was like reality TV, and I had a front row seat.
Shout out to Conor McGregor and Roadhouse.
Great flick.
It's just insane that we'll talk about schemas in a later episode, but we touched upon this when we first got together. We have a routine built in our heads of how we cope with life on a daily basis. We have a routine of accepting our anxiety. We have a routine of seeing ourselves in a negative way, and to the point where we think we're in control of it, and we think we're using it as fuel to motivate us. But there's a darkness where we could fool ourselves in just loving that spiral, loving that feeling of being out of control and enraged. And it's
I have
toxic.
never loved that feeling. Never.
Guilty.
Maybe, I don't know, but that's interesting to hear that from a woman, because I brought this up in other contexts, and commonly it's men who connect with that, and I think it's our inability, generally, that we're not good at being verbal, that we can't verbally communicate our pains.
Yeah, well, I'm not very good at being verbal.
I would disagree with that.
You think?
Are
Oh,
you kidding me?
I don't know. Sometimes it's hard for me to communicate how I'm feeling.
I'm sitting here thinking the opposite. Like, I'm very verbal. Like, I have no problem talking or, like getting my thoughts out of my mouth. Why do I struggle then with being verbal in this area?
That's a good question, because
Yeah.
I would love to know the same answer.
I
Do you
think
have any
there are
advice for
internal
Jeff?
struggles that we deal with where we're questioning ourselves, and that, it gets in the way of stepping out of ourselves to look at what our common triggers are,
Yeah.
and maybe accepting that. And that goes back to ego.
Yeah, and I think once that you figure out what your triggers are, it really does help, because then it brings down that level of fear because like, okay, well, if this is going to happen, this is going to trigger me. And then you can kind of talk yourself out of that. Sometimes those triggers win, and that's game over.
So whether it's therapy or whether it's being able to turn to someone that you trust and you value their feedback, of talking about the other day when we were interacting, I was a jerk. I won't explain where I was in that mindset. Whatever the segue is to start talking about where you are, where you're struggling, whether it be a spouse, your best friend, colleague, someone you trust, and starting that process. But the beginning of that process is looking at what you're struggling with, trying to identify those triggers, and that's a long road right there.
Yep.
Right? But after we identify those triggers, isolating them, and then getting to what Jeff was talking about, having goals to work towards.
Goals for me are so hard for me to set. I've always been like very hard on myself for setting goals. Even the most simplest goal, like I could be like, all right, I'm going to take care of the playroom today, and it seems like a never ending obstacle.
Here's a reframe for you.
Okay.
What do I want?
What do I want?
'Cause I have the same problem, but I have no problem being convicted about what I want.
Like being a little selfish.
Yeah. What am I after? What am I, what do I want? If the way things are right now are intolerable, how do I want things to be?
Yeah.
Why do you say selfish?
Yeah,
That's a buzzword. If I want to buy a bigger house, if I want material things, am I being selfish? No. Because that's a labeling.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I have a problem with labeling as well.
I was taught that selfishness is rooted around the statements or the examination of what do I want, what do I think, or what do I expect. And if I have strong feelings in those areas, chances are, if I'm not being validated or connecting or if my pursuit of those things aren't going smoothly, you're going to be able to tell by my outward presentation. Selfishness
is a judgment. Whether we're judging ourselves or I look at Christian, I'm like, yeah, that dude, he is so selfish. He hogs the mic all the time. He won't let anybody say a goddamn thing, but I'm labeling him. I'm judging his behavior. My perception is that he's selfish.
I guess the perception that I have for myself is completely different than I think somebody else would perceive me.
What's your perception of yourself?
I guess.
Don't guess. Tell me exactly.
I don't know. That's hard because I never really look at myself in a sense of perception, I guess. I think I just kind of go through my day to day as whatever. I wake up in the morning, same steps every single day, go throughout my day. And then, there's not much time left for me at the end of the day, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So for me, I guess I don't, like I've said in the last episode, I don't really know who I truly am at the moment other than studs and beams, I guess. So my perception of myself currently would be somebody who is finally not anxious and somebody who is self-doubting herself in a lot of areas, but I don't know why. But that's the goals that I'm trying to set for myself in a sense of, what's going to work for me.
What's going to work for you to be less self-doubting?
Yes. I don't know that.
To cut in on that, just to say where you're at right now, if we can give it a name, I suggest, finding a baseline. Like you're finding a baseline of who you are right now.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, that in itself is a journey.
Yeah, especially after so much anxiety and fear. Like living without that is a whole new world, which is crazy to be in. Coming from years worth of anxiety, postpartum anxiety, and years worth of worry and fear. And now I don't have that. It's very strange. So it's just like weird to live in a world that your brain isn't constantly on go.
Yeah. You're waiting for that other shoe to drop, right?
Always.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always.
How real is that? We deal with stress and anxiety and tragedy and trauma at such an extent that we normalize it.
Yes, and I think I normalized it for so long that it's hard for me to have a life without it.
We went through a period in my home where we had a series of deaths, one year after the next. My mom died. The same month, my father-in-law dies. A year after that, my mother-in-law dies. A year after that, my brother-in-law dies.
It's a lot.
You know, and we were constantly in a state of what the hell, you know, feeling robbed, our anger, our depression, our hurt,
Yeah.
you know, and that trickles down to our kids picking it up and affecting their lives. So we're constantly in a state of, right, you know, and we're in a state of shock. And as soon as we start getting our feet back under us, someone else passes away, right? Then we go through COVID. Then we had people pass away at that time.
And then you couldn't see them. You couldn't go say goodbye to them.
Couldn't even do that.
Right.
It's almost as if you were on a roller coaster. You did not like that ride, and it comes back into the landing zone. You see more people waiting to get on, and it just keeps going. You're like, "Oh, no, get me off this."
Get me off this crazy, yeah. Get me off this crazy ride, Jane.
Just listening to you say that, like my whole life has been one unfortunate event after another.
Right.
So like living in that state for ever since you can remember, it's kind of sad.
It is, but we normalize it because
Well, it had to become
That's life,
normalized
right.
because that was my reality.
right, and you have to function through your reality.
So when things are going good, I can't help but wait for the other shoe to drop.
Absolutely, absolutely,
And then I have the fear and the worry and the anxiety of if I put myself a little further, you know, what's going to be the outcome? Is it going to be the outcome that I want, or is it going to be the outcome that, oh, you know, I failed at that too?
yeah.
So, struggle bus city today, I guess. This subject is hard.
So, in a rapidly advancing society with like just technology exploding, we've all heard about ChatGPT and you know utilizing AI to just tackle everyday day-to-day stuff. Yeah. It wasn't until recently that I started coming and prompting things. Let me back up. For any of you that have never used OpenAI or you know, this isn't, I don't endorse or get sponsored by them or anything. It's just the platform that I gravitated towards. It's all based around how well you can prompt your ChatGPT to give you the answer you're looking for. And during the last 10 minutes or so, I just prompted Chat. I said, "You are a professional clinician. What are some of the most common and effective coping mechanisms for someone struggling with generalized anxiety disorder?" And this thing in seconds spit out at least 20 examples and good bullet points, but I was immediately drawn to one I've never heard of, never thought of, and I just think is amazing. It's called worry scheduling. Set aside a specific 15 to 30 minute window daily to worry, allowing individuals to postpone anxious thoughts during the day. So if my worry time is scheduled for 2 p.m. and I'm having a rough morning, that's a pretty cool tool. Like mantras, like having mantras have always helped me, like just little statements, no battles won in bed, you know, and so on and so forth. Having that constant reminder, telling myself, no, I have 2 p.m. I have 2 p.m. to worry. I'll sit down and journal. And that's something I'm going to adopt and absolutely
That's essentially
try.
what I do. I try to not focus on my worries until I journal. As you can tell, I have a journal in front of me. I journal usually, well, I've slipped off a little bit because the last couple of weeks have just been insane, but that is a great way to cope with anxiety, is setting a time to worry about it. I really do feel like that really is
gassed off
helpful.
of that.
Yeah, absolutely. What you guys are both talking about is creating structure to manage manage your anxious feelings,
Yep.
right? Or manage your depression, manage your racing thoughts. That knowing that at 2 p.m., a given point that you've identified, I'm going to address this. Having that security blanket matters.
Yeah.
Instead of feeling at a complete loss as to how I'm going to handle this and the day's just going to bring more crap my way. What do I do?
Yeah. The problem with me is like when I'm anxious, I don't eat. I don't know if anybody else at the table has an issue like that. So like the period
I've
of time.
never had that struggle, unfortunately.
Well, when I'm anxious, I don't eat at all. And that period of time in my life for the 3.5 years where I barely was functioning and I was just an anxious ball of mess, I wasn't eating. So that mind-body connection, really ties in together. And so having that outlet, whether it's in the morning or if it's in the afternoon or especially before bed, I really like to journal before bed. Getting my whole day out on paper is like very therapeutic for me. But yeah, it's just crazy how anxiety can manifest itself.
I tell the kids I work with all the time, you have to develop good habits, good coping mechanisms. Habits become routines. Routines become life.
Yep.
So you don't have to remind yourself, hopefully, before you leave your house, am I wearing pants?
Yeah.
You get up, the alarm goes off, you get up. We are so conditioned to fall into patterns that we don't have to think about. Hopefully the most of us. Alarm goes off, you get up, you hit the shower, you do your business, you get dressed. You have a schedule to follow. I know that if I leave my driveway past 7 o'clock, I am booking it to work because I missed my window on 95 South, right? But if I know that I hit it 6:45, I'm good.
Cruising.
I'm in my zone, and knowing
Setting
that,
yourself up for success,
yeah,
essentially.
knowing that helps me not feel anxious about that drive.
Yeah.
One little thing, address that little thing. If I know that this is going to work, use that. Make that a habit on a daily basis. The night before, I program my little coffee machine, or actually Laura does, I don't. And I get everything together, for the next day. So I'm not forgetting things, leaving out the door. I'm in a rush.
But when you're in an anxious state, all that goes out the window.
That goes out the window, exactly. And one little thing could trip up your whole
And then
day.
your whole day is ruined.
But if I make it a habit and I don't have to think about it, I just fall into that routine. It's systematic.
Yep.
So if we practice certain things on a daily basis, if we have that time on a daily basis, this is my worry time, this is my journal time, this is when I have time on the drive home, I'm going to process the day. And I'm going to think about what I could have done better. I'm going to think about what I'm going to do tomorrow instead of being self-defeating.
Yep.
If my habit is to think about what can I improve instead of what did I suck at.
Yeah.
So if I can have that mindset on a regular basis on the way home, and that's my time, my 40-minute drive home, that becomes a routine, right? So to get to that, it all goes back to battling your ego to begin with and acknowledging I've got to take care of this because I have roles to fulfill.
Yep.
Not that I can't take care of this right now because I have roles to fulfill.
Yep.
It's flip it. I've got to take care of this. I must hit this head on and destroy it before it destroys me.
Or else.
Like right now, I you know this, but I've been like on a wellness journey, I guess you could say that, or I'm trying to be. And for me, like going to the gym is such a heavy task. I don't know why, but like everybody's like, why do you need to go to the gym? You're so skinny. I want to go to build muscle because the weight is just not coming on as much as I would hope for it. It's just not. I'm eating. I'm doing what I have to do to put on the weight, but it's just not sticking. And at this point in my life, I'm kind of sick of being in this position where like nothing fits and I'm just so thin. I finally bit the bullet this week, went to the gym, signed up, and my cousin Haley, who's like a godsend to me, she's one of my favorite people in this world. She is my accountability partner for the gym.
Ah, beautiful.
Right on.
So
It's like that coach you were talking about. Having that person to motivate you, having that person to push you.
yes, so for me, I require having somebody in that light. I require having somebody to hold me accountable because I have never been able to hold myself accountable. Well, I have in certain areas, but not in this one. When I was younger, gym was my life. I was always in there, but now I have it's almost like I have amnesia. I have no idea what I'm doing. So having her is a huge stepping stone for me to get to that goal that I want for myself. Like we're going to Vegas in June. I would love to put on some pounds so I'm not a skinny rail out there.
The amount of comments we're gonna have in regards to this of all the juice heads telling Jess how to get.
I would love
I mean,
that.
no,
Any
no,
advice,
seriously,
send it my way,
I didn't mean
please.
to make a joke of that, but that's cool. I'm fairly certain that's gonna happen here. So.
Any advice on how to gain weight naturally, and I'll take it.
And you just talk about accountability. You just put that for everybody.
Well,
We're all gonna hold you accountable.
I would fucking hope so. Shit.
Giddy up.
I'm glad you bring up the gym too, because incorporating action towards a goal,
Well, a body in motion stays in motion.
amen. It's so important, and I've wasted so much of my adult life missing the boat on that.
And it
So
releases
happy that-
endorphins, and it helps your mental state. It helps your physical state, and it just keeps you motivated, I guess.
Even when I have a bad workout, I still feel accomplished. I did something.
Yeah.
I completed something.
Like on Wednesday, I forget what day I went to the gym, but you know, I left there feeling so energized and I felt so good. And I'm like, I can't wait to go back again. You know, we only did the treadmill, but I did it at an incline, and we walked for like 3 miles. But
great.
like,
You did something you didn't do the day before.
exactly.
You took action.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just so sick of not taking action that what do I have to lose at this point in my life?
That's where I think the best version of yourself is gonna become or start to be born.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying in the first episode when I was like, everyone's gonna hit that point eventually. I'd like to think so. Because once you hit that point of no one showing up for you and you gonna fucking do it, oh man, you're gonna create a monster.
Yeah, and I can't wait to meet that monster.
That's coming.
Well, that's your event too. That's like that.
Defining moment.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens.
At this point, if we could wrap up and we could say that we've talked about what it's like to feel caught in the spiral of an anxiety attack or panic attack. We've talked about the barriers that are in the way before we start developing coping strategies, before we reach out for help. And that's mainly ego, and that's fear of judgment. Once we can confide in someone to help us get over that hump, across that bridge of checking our ego, of saying, okay, I guess people will see me as a loser or a failure. Nevertheless, I have to address these issues because of all these other roles I have to fill that are important to me.
Yep.
I have to do this. Once you're at that stage and we start applying coping strategies, as we start developing little things, habits that become routines, the 3 main ways to do this is to engage in therapy,
Yep.
to get professional help, to create structure in our lives that'll be the stepping stones to achieve the goals that we're setting for ourselves, and to look at our health, not just our mental health, but also our physical health, because there is a mind-body connection. And that ties into structure, and structure then ties into therapy, having those scheduled appointments to have that time to actually discuss, these are the issues that came up last week. These are the issues that have been coming up since I started therapy. These are the struggles that are new to me now while I'm trying to maintain my structure and habits and routines. These are new issues. How do I handle that? But if we can work on creating those coping strategies and embrace those coping strategies in our lives, that'll give us the focus, and those are the tools that we can utilize and tweak and perfect as we live our lives. Life's always going to throw something at us,
That's just life.
and that is life. So we could either exist or we could live. But if you want to live, you have to embrace the fact that you will feel pain, that you will feel obstacles and struggles that are going to be coming down the road at you. That is life. But that doesn't mean that we're a victim of life. We have to experience life and do the best we can to get through it.
It's the difference between life is happening and life is happening to me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, life is a contact sport, right? It's going to knock you on your ass, and you have to get back up, and you have to get back into the game. Now you can choose to stop and quit. That's horrible, and that's sad. Does that happen? Yeah. But if you can acknowledge the pain you're feeling, acknowledge the fact that you need to do something about it, and start creating the structures that'll help you move from that stage to the next stage, which is where your goals are, that's healthy. Is it going to happen overnight? Of course not. But is it real, and do we all struggle with it? Yes.
It's not going to happen overnight. I love that. So this mindset that I developed of it's not going to happen overnight. I love when people say that shit to me because no, it's not going to completely happen overnight. But overnight, you can get on the goddamn path to making it happen.
Yeah.
They're saying it takes 9 months to make a baby. Well,
Yeah.
six months in, she's showing. There's a belly there. It's
It took 30 seconds to make a baby.
Yeah, maybe for you, pal. But yeah, I think
They have pills for that.
it all boils down to action. And if you're someone that is still viewing this podcast, this publication, hour deep or however long in we are, if I could hit you with just one takeaway from this, it's take action, do something. Taking any sort of action that you weren't taking yesterday, it's either going to give you it's going to give you an example of something that maybe isn't suited to you or doesn't work, but it's going to be one thing checked off your list in the pursuit of finding that thing that does work. Maybe you'll get lucky and the first thing you try moves the meter for you considerably, and then you can start to breathe a little bit and assess the situation for better solutions. But if you don't take that initial action, if you don't have that initial conversation opening up, you're never going to start inching towards that solution. And it doesn't happen overnight, and it does take 9 months to have a baby or whatever however the expression correctly goes. But
Rome wasn't built in a day.
Rome was not built in a day, but I happen to be somebody that I typically see pretty quick results from action when I take action. I'm usually pretty surprised by, wow, why didn't I do this months
Sooner.
ago or
Yeah.
years ago? I'm not really somebody that would stick around thank God I would not thug it out for for too long before being like, all right, I'm out, see you later. I'm going to go back to solving my problems the way that I know how to,
But do you ever solve those problems?
no, but I feel better for 30 seconds,
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the thing with me. I say that I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something, and I don't do it. So so many reasons to fix my problems, I would feel so much better. That made no sense. There's so many reasons to fix my problems so that I can feel better, but I just don't take the action. And I think it's the fear of failing.
Yeah.
Sure. Back to that action piece, though, as soon as you did start to take action, I bet the results were pretty sudden and profound.
Yeah.
Even just as a placebo effect of holy shit, I did something. I feel good.
Well, even when I started the program that I went to, it took weeks to feel better. Weeks, because in the beginning you're kind of sitting in a room listening to people's stories, kind of seeing where you belong, where you fit, and it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't. So it's just frustrating because I wish it did, because I would love for things to just come easy. But yeah.
I've seen that mentality grow more and more. Getting back to what you were saying in this evolving society of what we're using technology constantly. We hit a button and we expect an immediate response. We go to the ATM machine, money spits out at us. The drive-through, everything's bang, 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 right?
DoorDash.
Yeah, it's
Target
immediate.
delivers
it's immediate
now.
service.
Amazon.
Oh my God, yeah. So our ability to look at ourselves and give ourselves the grace that this is going to take time. Why? Everything else in my life,
But everything good takes time.
well, I hear it, but do I believe it?
Yeah.
you know, because everything else in my life is so immediate, you know, and I think back to the students I work with on a daily basis. I've got students, so most people think that I work with students that are like, you know, doing drugs, they're very violent, they've got a crappy household, you know, no one at home, blah, blah. Yes, I do work with those students, but I also work with a lot of students that are these high achieving kids that are taking like 6 or 7 AP classes, and if they get a B, their life just falls apart. They see themselves as absolute garbage. I have other students who won't turn in an assignment, and it's not a question of intelligence, it's that if I don't get the A, I'm not going to bother turning in the assignment. I'm not going to engage in this. I'm trying to explain to them, you're still getting graded, Chucky. You're going to get a big fat 0 for not turning in this assignment. How about you turn it in and take the C or take the B?
That's how I was.
Right? But this is a real thing that a lot of people struggle with. I'm going to bang in sick today because I don't want to go to that staff meeting where I'm going to be called out for not having whatever product I need by the end of the week. I don't know. Like, just avoidance.
Just to clarify real quick, I assume you never had a student named Chucky in that situation.
No Chuckies.
Yeah, okay. Just making sure.
That's a Queens thing. Hey, Chucky, what's up? You know.
What's up, Chucky?
Yeah, it's like dude, I guess. But no Chuckies. I've gotten in trouble for that. I got to stop saying Chucky.
Oh, that's why I want to clarify for anybody watching.
No, I've never
if
had
you ever had, you know,
a student or a
somebody named
client,
Charles.
no one named Chucky. I got in trouble once.
Ooh, he never talks about him getting in trouble.
Yeah.
This is when I was a dean, when I first started in the school that we met. I don't want to say it, like, I don't want to get yelled at by anybody in that town.
The dean of mean.
You would not believe the things I was called. Anyway, so I'm dealing with I'm having this interaction with this young lady, telling her she's got to put her phone away. You know, a simple thing. All right, we got a phone policy. Put your phone away, get to class. So I said, come on, Chucky, put it away. She heard chunky.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Ma, you're not going to believe this guy. Oh, my God. 20 minutes. Mom comes flying through the door. You're fat shaming my daughter. I'm like, whoa. What's going on
I
here?
called her Chucky. Sure you did, pal. That sounds good.
Yeah, that was a downward spiral. You know,
I can imagine.
well, I've got
I
stories.
appreciate the laugh.
I'm getting anxious just thinking about it.
You see what he did there?
Love it.
One thing I want to say before we sign out, if we're ready to sign out, is I want to ask the viewers, I want to challenge them. How many times has it taken for you to try and fail, until you realize I got to keep trying? Trying is what matters. Having the effort to dig deep within yourself and say, I'm worth it, I'm going to keep trying. Yes, I failed again. Yes, I used again. Yes, I did go to work again. Yes, I still feel like crap because I think people are judging me. What is motivating you to keep trying? And I'd love to hear your story as to what's keeping you in the game to address your fears. Remember, no battle is won in bed.